Commissioner Gordon. Bane has escaped.
A single act means nothing in isolation. One workout doesn't sculpt your body. 1 hour of focus doesn't sharpen your mind. One apology doesn't cleanse your past. But do that act again, then again, then again, and something begins to shift. Not in the world, but in you. The act becomes a ritual. The ritual becomes a rhythm. The rhythm becomes identity. That's the unseen power of habit. It rewires reality from the inside out. Every time you choose repetition over impulse, discipline over comfort, purpose over pleasure, you cast a vote for the person you are becoming. Not who you claim to be, not who you want to be, but who you are proving yourself to be. In the silence, in the dark, in the moments no one sees. You can speak all the affirmations you want. You can write goals in gold ink. You can vision board your future into oblivion. But none of it matters if your habits betray your ambition. If your daily actions serve your weakness instead of your evolution, then who you become will always remain a shadow of who you could have been. Because your character is not born, it is built, hour by hour, step by step, choice by choice. Habits are not about productivity. They're not about performance. They are about transformation. And if you want to change your life, you must first change what you do when no one's watching. Most men think they need breakthroughs to change. They wait for some grand epiphany, some life-shattering moment to jolt them into motion. But you don't rise through revelation. You rise through repetition, through showing up when you don't want to, through doing the hard thing without applause, through sticking to the process even when the results are invisible. That is where the shift happens, not in the highlight, but in the hidden, in the days that blur together, in the hours that test your will. That's where the new you is formed, quietly, relentlessly, unshakably. Habits are not what you do. They are what you allow. Every excuse you tolerate becomes a vote for the man you'll hate in the mirror. Every standard you drop becomes the thread that unravels your future. You don't need motivation. You need memory. You need to remember who you said you were going to be. And you need to prove it in the small hours, in the food you eat, the words you speak, the time you waste, the people you allow in your space. Every detail is a seed, and every seed grows. Whether you like what it becomes or not, that's on you. Discipline is not a trait. It's a decision made so many times it becomes your nature. A man of discipline doesn't think. He acts. He doesn't wait. He moves. His habits become armor. They shield him from chaos. They keep him focused when the world screams for his attention. And when things fall apart, he does not panic, because his routines don't rely on how he feels. They are forged in commitment. When you build yourself around habits, you become untouchable. Because while others chase motivation, you chase mastery. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. Bad habits are just as powerful, maybe more. They are easier, softer, more seductive. They feel harmless. A missed session, a skipped task, a few more minutes lost in distraction. But they compound like interest, quietly, ruthlessly, until one day you look back and realize you didn't just lose momentum, you lost identity. You don't recognize who you've become, not because of one decision, but because of thousands of tiny ones you justified in the moment. The man you are now is the child of your habits, good or bad. You gave birth to him. Habits are destiny written in micro movements. They don't ask for your permission. They don't care about your goals. They serve your consistency. Whatever you feed them, they grow. You want to be a man of discipline? Train daily. You want to be a man of clarity? Reflect daily. You want to be a man of action? Execute daily. The key word is daily. Not when convenient, not when inspired, daily. Because the frequency determines the foundation, and the foundation determines who you become. If you want to change your life, don't ask what needs to happen. Ask what you need to do every day. The change is not in the plan, it's in the pattern. What do you do after you fail? What do you do when no one notices? What do you do when it doesn't feel urgent? That's your blueprint. That's your DNA. And if you don't like the answers, don't write a new mission statement. Build a new routine. Systems beat slogans. Process beats potential. Habits beat hope. You are not in control of who you are in one moment, but you are absolutely in control of who you become over time. You can't fake it forever. Your habits will either expose you or elevate you. And the difference between regret and respect is found in what you do when the cameras are off. So ask yourself, what are you rehearsing every day? What version of yourself are you practicing in private? Because eventually that version will walk out into the world, and you'll either be proud of him or haunted by him. 3 to 6 months of beginner hell is not a punishment. It's a ritual, a sacred fire designed to expose you, not to hurt you, but to reveal what you're really made of. Those early months, where effort feels wasted, progress feels invisible, and results mock you with their absence, that's the proving ground. That's the price. Nature has its own intelligence. It does not hand out transformation without first demanding sacrifice. It will not give the throne to the man who only wanted the crown. It will not gift the body, the mind, the freedom, or the mastery to the one who only shows up when it's easy. That beginner hell, that's the door, and most turn away before they even knock. You think you're failing because nothing's working, but that silence, that stagnation, that long stretch of invisible growth, it is working. You're being tested in the furnace of doubt. Your impulses are being stripped. Your fantasy is being shattered. You are learning that greatness is not built in a week. That grit is not just a word, it's a crucifixion of comfort. Every rep you do without results is rewiring you. Every hour you work without applause is sharpening you. The progress may be invisible, but it is inevitable if you remain. That's the game. Stay long enough to see the pattern reveal itself. Most never do. Most need results to believe, but the rarest of men believe long before the results arrive. You want transformation? Good. Then first you'll be buried, not by others, but by yourself, by your expectations, by your impatience, by your craving for validation. And it's in that burial that the real work begins. You keep showing up while your mind whispers doubt. You keep acting while your ego screams for shortcuts. And in that space, where logic says quit but instinct says continue, you're no longer a beginner. You're becoming forged. Not because the process got easier, but because you stopped needing it to be. Most people start projects with hope. They begin with the buzz of a new identity forming, the fantasy of how it will feel when it's done, the applause, the validation, the status. But the process strips all that. It does not care how excited you were on day 1. It only cares how disciplined you are on day 90. It asks you to keep climbing while it hides the summit in clouds. And every day you get up and grind without seeing progress. You prove that you are not chasing a dream. You are building a reality. That's the difference between a wish and a will. Beginner hell is not unfair. It's precision warfare, a surgical filter built by nature itself to eliminate pretenders. The man who only wanted the feeling of progress will disappear. He will say it wasn't for him. He will say life got in the way. He will say it wasn't sustainable. And the world will accept that excuse because the world is filled with people who quit too soon. But the man who stays, the man who embraces the dull, brutal, monotonous repetition without praise, he emerges from hell different, scarred, yes, but sculpted. Habits only change you if you survive the beginning. That's what most miss. They read the books, they set the schedule, they build the habit tracker. But when the initial buzz fades and the results are nowhere in sight, they fall because they thought change would feel good. But change feels like chaos. It feels like failure. It feels like digging a tunnel and praying there's light at the end. And the ones who keep digging, they don't just find the light, they become it. There's a quiet nobility in enduring those early months, in working while everyone else watches, in failing while no one believes in you, in showing up with no audience, no encouragement, and no clear sign of progress. That's where character is built, not in the win, but in the stretch between effort and evidence. If you can live there, if you can bleed in that in-between, you are unstoppable. Because the man who no longer needs proof has already become his own. No one warns you about the boredom, the stillness, the moments where you think, is this even working? But that question, that tension, is the gatekeeper. It is not a sign to quit. It's a sign to double down, to go deeper, to keep pushing when logic says pause. And if you do one day without warning, the breakthrough arrives. You feel the shift. The work compounds. The results flood in. And what looks like luck to others is simply what happens when you outlast the quitters. That's what habits do. They carve new realities with dull blades, slowly, methodically, through days that feel empty, through weeks that feel wasted. But you keep showing up, you keep cutting, and one day the wall cracks, the light pours in, and the man who began in hell now walks in mastery. Not because he was special, but because he stayed, because he built identity on discipline, not dopamine, because he trusted that the system never fails, only the impatient do. The only thing more difficult than pursuing the best version of yourself is not pursuing the best version of yourself. At first glance, that sounds like contradiction. Like self-mastery and surrender exist on the same scale of pain. But look deeper. Because the pain of self-development is sharp, clean, and earned. It burns with purpose, it stings with direction, it leaves scars that tell stories. But the pain of avoidance, that one corrodes. It doesn't shout, it festers. It slowly infects your spirit with questions that never leave. What if I had started earlier? What if I'd stuck with it? What if I hadn't let fear be my guide? That is a pain that does not push you. It imprisons you. And every year you wait. The cell gets smaller. You think growth hurts? Try regret. Try waking up every day knowing you had a vision and walked away from it. Try carrying the knowledge that you were capable of more, but settled for less because it was easier to pretend you didn't care. You can lie to others. You can play it cool. You can say it didn't matter. But deep down, the version of you that never saw the light of day screams louder than any failure ever could. Because at least the man who tried has stories, at least he has a battle. The man who never tried, he has excuses dressed as philosophies. There's a raw brutality in pursuit. It demands sacrifice, comfort, predictability, sometimes even connection. You don't get to be understood and extraordinary. You don't get to be liked and legendary. You don't get both. And yet, for all the agony, all the repetition, all the days that feel like digging through wet cement, it still costs less than living a life misaligned. Because when you chase your potential, at least the suffering makes sense. At least the pain has a destination. But when you avoid it, you still suffer. Only now, it's without reward. Avoiding the best version of yourself is not peace. It's passive decay. And it doesn't happen in dramatic collapse. It happens in slow, invisible corrosion. It's skipping the gym one day, postponing that project again, numbing your brain with content instead of writing, building, thinking. And little by little, your soul stops knocking. Your energy dims. Your hunger dies. Not because you were lazy, but because you trained yourself to tolerate mediocrity. You rehearsed compromise until it became your identity. That's the price of not pursuing. And it's a bill you don't see until you're already bankrupt. The pursuit of self-mastery is unforgiving, but it gives back. Inch by inch, it strengthens you. You become sharper. You become more honest, more dangerous. You know what discomfort feels like, and you stop fearing it. You walk through resistance with a smirk because you've learned that progress never announces itself with fireworks. It comes disguised as monotony. It comes during the late nights, the early mornings, the canceled plans, the conversations with yourself in silence. And if you endure long enough, you begin to look at the man in the mirror differently. Not with pride, but with respect. But when you avoid that pursuit, the reflection gets harder to look at. Not because you're ashamed of your failure, but because you're haunted by your potential. You know exactly who you could have been. You saw flashes. You had the hunger. You had the roadmap. But you delayed. You overthought. You waited for perfect conditions. And now, all that remains are glimpses of the physique you never built, the impact you never made, the peace you never earned. The ghost of the man you avoided becoming lingers. He doesn't age. He doesn't leave. He just watches. You don't get to choose a pain-free life. You only get to choose the pain that builds or the pain that breaks. One leads to alignment. The other leads to erosion. One makes you dangerous to mediocrity. The other makes you easy to ignore. You think you're avoiding the storm by staying small, but you're only drowning in stillness. The water looks calm until you realize it's pulling you under. Pursuit teaches you how to swim. Avoidance teaches you how to sink quietly. And the hardest part? The longer you delay, the more effort it takes to reverse the decay. Habits solidify. Beliefs calcify. Your brain wires itself to tolerate less, to settle more, to justify everything. The climb becomes steeper not because the mountain grew, but because you kept digging your own hole. And one day you wake up with no wind, no fire, no vision. That is not aging. That is surrender. The death of possibility, done in silence, wrapped in a routine you never questioned. Every day you get to choose. Chase the man you're meant to be or run from him. And both paths hurt, but one of them leaves you free. One of them gives you depth. One of them turns pain into power, mistakes into method, failure into fuel. The other leaves you shallow, apologetic, disconnected from your own fire. And what's the point of surviving if you never set yourself on fire long enough to see what would remain? You solve a problem by sitting with it, not flinching, not outsourcing it to distractions, not numbing yourself with noise. You stare it in the face long enough that it starts revealing its structure. Every problem has a skeleton, a pattern, a set of rules it obeys, even if it hides behind chaos at first. But those rules don't show themselves to the man who looks away. They reveal themselves to the man who watches, who breathes into the discomfort, who carries the burden like armor and refuses to put it down until the weight teaches him something. That's how you solve problems, not by hoping for solutions, but by becoming the kind of man who earns them through sheer obsession. The mind, when locked on a question with discipline, becomes a magnet for relevance. Everything you read, everything you hear, everything you witness filters through the lens of that problem. And without realizing it, you begin building bridges, drawing connections, finding dots that were invisible before you were possessed by the puzzle. This is not random. This is nature's reward for those who don't quit at confusion. The brain reshapes itself around focus. But that reshaping only happens when the problem is allowed to simmer, not be shoved away for comfort. You don't solve the issue by waiting for clarity. You solve it by confronting fog with faith. When the problem becomes your lens, your reality reorganizes. You start seeing solutions in unrelated places. A line in a book hits differently. A conversation you overhear becomes data. A failure becomes a map. You begin to harvest from places you didn't even know were fertile, because the problem has rooted itself into your perception. And now, everything is either fuel for the answer or proof of the lesson. That kind of alignment cannot be taught. It is only built through immersion. You have to live inside the question. You have to let it haunt you. Only then will it bend to your will. Avoidance makes problems immortal. You can delay, you can dance around it, you can dress it in euphemisms. But a problem ignored is a problem expanded. It grows roots in the shadows. It multiplies beneath your routine. And when it returns, it does so louder, sharper, more embedded in the foundation of your life. That is why the habit of sitting with the hard things matters. Because facing problems when they're small is your only shot at freedom. Otherwise, they become architecture, part of your identity, cemented in your behavior, built into your decisions. That is the cost of delay. Solving a problem is not about intelligence, it's about intimacy. You must know it better than anyone else. You must understand its origins, its patterns, its triggers, its disguises. This takes time. This takes presence. This takes a willingness to feel the discomfort without escaping it. And when you do that, when you refuse to blink, you don't just solve the problem. You extract wisdom from it. You turn it into philosophy, into code, into something that can be used again, across time and space. You become fluent in the language of solutions, and that fluency gives you leverage over every storm ahead. Most people ask questions, then run from the silence that follows. But answers don't live in noise. They wait in the tension, in the awkward stillness, in the sleepless nights where your mind circles the same thought over and over. That's not failure. That's the forge. That's where you sharpen. That's where your identity is rewritten, not in perfect clarity, but in persistent curiosity, the willingness to sit longer than others, to stare deeper than most. That's the edge. That's the fire. And only those who trust that process earn the truth beneath the surface. You want a better life? Then fall in love with problems. Make them your companions. Learn their names. Study their movement. The man who fears problems remains their slave. The man who understands them becomes their master. Every high-level thinker, every innovator, every architect of reality, they don't have fewer problems. They just have better habits of sitting with them, of decoding them, of letting them become the soil in which their next chapter is planted. Problems are not enemies. They are invitations. And if you show up fully, they become your greatest teachers. And the longer you commit to this way of life, the more automatic it becomes. Your brain begins to treat every challenge as a puzzle to be unlocked, not a threat to be avoided. You start looking at tension as an opportunity. Your reaction time changes. Your identity shifts. You no longer panic, you analyze. You no longer flinch, you focus. You no longer ask, why is this happening? You ask, what is this teaching? That transformation doesn't happen through theory. It happens through habitual confrontation with the unsolved,